As early as February 7th of this year, Bob Woodward had audio evidence of Donald Trump acknowledging the severity of coronavirus, acknowledging how serious this pandemic is, and also acknowledging that coronavirus is much more lethal than the common flu. But he chose to hold on to this audio, sit on it, and wait to release it just as close as possible to the release date of his book, because he wants to promote and sell his book. Anyone who says otherwise is delusional, period. Don't come at me with, no, this is how you do ethical journalism. No, this is not how you do ethical journalism. You have to, as a journalist, think about what's in the best interests of the public. What can you do to hold people in positions of power accountable? And as Donald Trump lied over and over and over again, months and months went by while he did this, Woodward still sat on the information that we now have heard, now have read, and I think it's a problem. Now, I'm not the only one who's criticized Woodward. Apparently, other journalists have done that. And so as a result, he had an interview with the Washington Post in an attempt to defend himself. I am not buying any of it, period. Let me give you what he says. Contrary to what people believed earlier, Woodward did not have a signed agreement with Trump or the White House to embargo all details or comments until the book came out. Every once in a while, there might be a deal like that with the subjects that are interviewed for the book. In this case, Woodward is honest and he says, no such deal existed. There was no embargo. There was no legal obligation that prevented him from releasing the audio earlier in the year when people could have heard Donald Trump's statements about the severity of this virus. Woodward said his aim was to provide a fuller context than could occur in a news story. He's quoted as saying, I knew I could tell the second draft of history, and I knew I could tell it before the election. Former Washington Post publisher Phil Gramm famously called journalism the first rough draft of history. Yeah, okay, how about you just be honest? You wanted to sell your books. That's why you held on to this. This is the kind of scandalous evidence that people like to put out right before they sell their books. This is how you do it. The publishers encourage you to do it. Writers know that you should do this. That's exactly what Bob Woodward did here. Now, if you want to come at me or come at anyone who's making the arguments I'm making and say, no, you don't get it. You don't get it. Bob Woodward is just the kind of journalist who wants to do a thorough investigation. And so he couldn't, in an ethical way, release that audio close to February 7th. Okay, fine. Let me just remind you guys, it is September. September what? It is September 10th. September 10th. The first time Trump acknowledged that coronavirus is serious was February 7th, and he continued to make similar statements throughout the year in the 18 conversations he had with Woodward. I can't believe that people are buying this nonsense. I get it. I get that Democrats want to latch onto any negative news story about Trump because they know that they have nothing better to offer with someone like Biden. So rather than offering policies that are appealing to people, they just latch on to negative Trump news because they think that's all it takes to get Trump out. It is not all it takes. And I'm not buying for a second that what Bob Woodward did was the ethical thing, because he is an honorable investigative journalist who believes that it's okay to watch hundreds of thousands of Americans die because of Donald Trump's misinformation, disinformation. Okay? Yeah, I'm fired up about this because it's amazing to me how unbelievably naive Americans can be. This is about selling books, period. I have more of his so-called defense, but go ahead. You guys can talk.
Yeah, so it's a no-brainer. The only people denying it are people in Washington who also one day want to sell books. And this is how folks have lost faith in the corporate media. And it's led the right wing into a dark place where they have invented theories as to what is happening because they think to themselves, well, I know the media is lying. That's clear. They tell me every day that politicians are honorable people having legitimate debates about policy and principles. That's ridiculous. There's a poll that just came out Number one issue is jobs in the economy, very understandable. Number three is health. Number two is corruption. You never see that on television because they're part of the corruption. So people have become basically immunized, if you will, to what the media is saying. But here they go again. So covering up for their friend. Did he release it right before his book is coming out to make more money on the book? Of course, every single person that's a rational human being knows that. Look, I don't know that he could have saved lives by saying it earlier. The Cult 45 would have just been like, oh, yeah, that's good. You downplay a virus so grandpa can get it. Oh, yeah, my couple of relatives died, but they had it coming, but by being old and stuff. And I'm glad Trump downplayed it. So it probably wouldn't have worked with his MAGA cult. But did he have some obligation to reveal it as a somewhat semi-journalist? Of course. Did he instead hold it for his own benefit? Obviously.
In March, Donald Trump was repeating over and over again that this isn't any worse than the common flu. But he had admitted on tape to Bob Woodward that this is much more lethal than the common flu. So at that point, like what kind of investigation do you need to do? Like, I'm very curious about that, because at that point, health experts were already putting out data about the reality of this virus. They were also putting out data showing that asymptomatic individuals can spread this virus. Donald Trump was lying about that publicly, but privately had told Bob Woodward, again, on tape, that asymptomatic people can spread it. So my question is, and look, I'm not talking about the MAGA guys. I'm not talking about the death cult. I'm talking about rational people, right, who are receptive to the data and the evidence from health experts. But Trump purposely, said things that confused people. I mean, February 7th was the first time Trump had that conversation with Bob Woodward where he admitted that coronavirus is serious. In late February, I went on a cruise. And honestly, I remember, Cenk, having a conversation with you where I was like, I don't know if this is really that serious. I didn't know. Little did I know, though, that Donald Trump in early February already knew, based on an intel briefing that he had in late January, that this pandemic is serious. Yeah. I can't believe that people are look, what Bob Woodward did here and what I'm criticizing him for doesn't take away from the legendary journalistic work he's done in the past, okay? Everybody stop for a second and think about things in a nuanced way. Both things can be true. Woodward can be a legendary journalist, but he can also be a human who has his own financial self-interest, who makes mistakes. And in this case, I think he made a giant mistake. I don't understand the this like knee-jerk desire to defend him when it's demonstrably wrong and unethical to sit on evidence that could have informed people in a way to prevent themselves from getting sick or possibly even dying.
Yeah, look, John Bolton held on to evidence that could have helped in Donald Trump's impeachment proceedings so that he could release it closer to his book. So this is very common practice among the elites. And now John Bolton is not liked by the elites for a lot of reasons, but he's liked by some of them. Anyway, but Bob Woodward is at the very epicenter of the establishment. So yeah, there'll be some folks on Twitter who'll tweak him and or go after him, and then there'll be some in the media circles who tweak him because they're like, wait, did you not get the memo? We're all going after Trump. And Woodward says in his defense, he says, don't worry, I timed it to before the election. I don't know that that's a great defense either, right? You shouldn't time it to before or after the election. You should go with it when you have it. Look, the only thing he should have said is, look, a book is a holistic experience. It's not like an article. So you have to see the whole story in its context. That's why I held it. That would have been his best defense. But even so, we know it's for profit. But the main point here is largely he'll be absolved of all of that. And today already on Twitter, President Woodward is trending, okay? Because the establishment loves guys like Woodward, You get suck up to power when you need to. You tweak people the establishment doesn't like. Believe me, if it was a left-wing president, he would have done the same or probably far, far worse. And the establishment would have loved that too. So the reality, and one last thing, guys, the mainstream media does this all the time. New York Times held a story about warrantless wiretapping until the election was over in 2004. And they did it because they said they didn't want to affect the election. No, if you had a story and you held it, that means you held it for a political purpose. And in that case, it was to help Bush and Cheney. They also had a story about how the Bush administration didn't go after Osama bin Laden and Tora Bora. They also held that until after the 2004 election. These are deeply political decisions that media outlets make all the time. But at the end of the day, since they're all one big group and club, they just pat each other on the back, call each other president, and move on with their lives.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.